Welcome, everyone. Hello. Thank you for joining us for this very special program. My name is Marilyn Stocker. I am, of course, a graduate of Barnard. I'm a proud alum. I am the vice president forever of the class of 1970, which makes me the chair of the reunion. And I am proud to say that I have made it up to the big reunion committee of the AABC reunion committee, who very proudly bring you this exciting event. How's the sound? Everyone fine? Good. We are also joined by Erica Martin. I don't know if you want to say hello. Erica. And Patricia Carchi-Merrick, who are helping make this event possible. I know behind the scenes, we have the wonderful Karen Sendler and Lacey Beck from our alumni relations, who do incredible things to make so many things happen for us out in the alumni world. Now, the legal people like me to say this word for word, so forgive me, but this is the legal disclaimer about recording. We are going to be recording this. So word for word. As a quick reminder, this online event enables an attendee to participate through personal devices, such as microphones or cameras. An attendee may elect not to participate through use of the mic or the camera. The election of an attendee to use a mic or camera constitutes a release and waiver of rights in the capture of the image, likeness, and/or voice for the exclusive use of Barnard College. In point of fact, we are recording this so that people who couldn't come today will see it. So please be aware that you are now giving your tacit agreement for that. So on to it, this very exciting book event. We have very special guests with us today, as you all know. Over 300 people actually signed up for this. We already have almost 70 people online. I want to say, Mary Gordon needs no introduction to you all who've come signed up for this, but I'm going to introduce her anyway. And we also are honored to have Professor Asa Gabori, who is a full professor of English in the faculty at Barnard. These two colleagues have had an exchange before that was apparently incredibly rich, and so they are going to talk to each other about the book. Let me just introduce them a little bit. Mary Gordon is the author of 9 novels, including Final Payments, The Love of My Youth, Pearl, and There Your Heart Lies, 6 works of nonfiction, including memoirs, Circling My Mother and The Shadow Man, and 3 collections of short fiction, including The Stories of Mary Gordon, which was awarded the Story Prize. She lives in New York until very recently was a full professor at Barnard College. And by the way, she was in the class behind me, and she is in a milestone class celebrating a very large reunion, the 50th reunion. So we're very excited to have her. And of course, we're here to talk about her most recent book, Payback. This is my imitation of Vanna White, Payback. Vanna White said, letters are my life, A, B, C, okay. And Professor Gabori joined the faculty in 2004. At Barnard, her teaching specialties include Milton Dunn, 17th century literature and nation formation, and Christian-Jewish relations and religious identity in the early modern period. Her book, Christian Identity, Jews in Israel in 17th century England, won the Shawcross Award from the Milton Society, and she has many other awards, including having been a Guggenheim Fellow. So here's how it will work. Unfortunately, we can't have small groups, and because we have so many people signed up, we will not ask you to come on and ask your questions, but we would like you very much to be asking your questions in the chat. Please include your questions or comments in the chat with your name. We are going to start off by handing this to Mary and Asa. I believe we will have a brief reading to start with, and then they will get into it in a great dialogue and conversation. That will go on approximately a half an hour, when we will gently stop the action and start asking questions. So please feel free to put those questions in the chat, and we will get as many in as we can. I just want to say that having just read Payback myself, I think there are many rich themes to explore, such as, can revenge ever heal a wound? What about mentorship between a female teacher and a student, or a mentor and a protege? We've all probably experienced that in our time at Barnard. I hope so. Number 3 question, the difference between reality TV and reality. Of course, that's so pertinent coming out of the age that we just came out of our Trump presidency. And the role of fiction as an antidote to social media and the technology addictions we see today. Rumor has it, Professor Gordon has said, quote, fiction is the opposite of a tweet. Fiction is the opposite. It's a very quotable quote. So without further ado, I would like to hand it to our wonderful speakers. And perhaps as just to kick things off before you start in, will you share with us what inspired you to write Payback, Mary?
Okay, first of all, I want to apologize for my sunglasses, but those of you in my cohort will understand I just had cataract surgery. So I'm not trying to be Jackie O. I'm just following doctor's orders. So forgive me for the sunglasses. What inspired me to write Payback was, of course, it really is a Trump era book and an our era book. So on one hand, it was my distress that people think reality TV is reality. And I was just, I think as many of us were, upset by the kind of toxic appetite for revenge that seemed to be in the air. But also, that's my dog. But I've always been very interested in the idea of revenge and the idea of forgiveness and the idea of the past that bleeds into the present, and that sometimes things that can happen in a minute have such a profound effect on the rest of the life. So those are the kinds of things that inspired me. So I'm going to begin then. I'll just read the very beginning and the very end. So for those of you who haven't read the book, it begins with Quinn Archer, who is a reality TV star, and her show, which is about Payback. And I just wanted to read the beginning and the end because they're tonally quite different. They're just quite satiric and I hope a little amusing. Okay. The Arizona sun is strong this February afternoon, but all the women are quite cool and comfortable. You might think that they chose the colors of their shorts and sleeveless tops to match the color of the fruits they're eating: cantaloupe, watermelon, honeydew. Their fingernails and toenails are painted in various shades of opalescence: silver, rose, robin's egg blue. This is their weekly ritual: water aerobics, a manicure, a pedicure, then lunch, raw fruits, raw vegetables, whey protein enriched smoothies in front of one of their wall-sized TVs. Their children are grown, their husbands are somewhere. They are waiting for the show that is their favorite and for which they feel a proprietary pride because it started as a local cable show here in their own Brimstone and has gone national. But they knew it when. I love her. I just love her. I'm crazy about everything about her. When she goes after someone, I just feel good about things. Like the world is on the right track. Blah, 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 and boo hoo hoo, they say, imitating Quinn's inflection, toasting each other with their pastel smoothies. Good afternoon, lovers of justice. This is Quinn Archer, and this is Payback. Today's show exposes a greedy, dishonest father, Winston Lamar. He cheated his daughter, Cynthia, of a legacy left by her grandmother. So she explores that. Then I want to end the book, end with what happens after everything has been realized in the book. These are the same women. The women meet for lunch after hot yoga at Brimstone's newest restaurant, Slow Co Loco, so named for the principles slow cooked, locally sourced. They are fortunate to have been given a table, knowing that they needed to reserve a week in advance. The menu provides two choices, each accompanied by a narrative. Quote, cauliflower nest, poached egg from our own hens living behind the restaurant, the gift of Polly and Molly, our best layers. In a nest of cauliflower grown down the road at one of our dear providers, Willow Moonstone, organic farmer extraordinaire and star of Valerie Singleton's Morning Circle. Our vegan option, celeriac soup, lovingly slow cooked by our own Tracy Windsor, grown a quarter mile down the road by our treasured Mike and Sissy Lloyd. Rumor has it that the avocados they're growing in their greenhouse will be available within a month or two. The women do not balk at the price of each entree, $24. They call this their splurge day, and they know that they deserve it. They have been good wives, good mothers, and they fear the day later rather than sooner, they hope, when their husbands have retired. Might be some belt tightening, the husbands have said, but there will be no belt tightening, rather belt loosening, if they have to cut down on their classes at the gym and no longer lunch in places like Sloco Loco, which tend to be pricey. It's great to see that Willow's farm is doing well, one of the women says, and that she and Valerie and Allison are still with us. I still can't believe that Payback has been canceled. You could see it coming. She was losing her edge. It seemed to be the same thing all the time, money and sex, money and sex. And it really blew up. I mean, come on. And really, it just seemed she's a little over the top. The arms were getting a little ropey. She really had to stop wearing those sleeveless sheaths. I mean, maybe you can't be too thin or too rich, but those arms were looking really ropey. I can't talk to you. I wonder what they're going to replace her with. There was some talk of the Real Housewives of Phoenix, but I don't think it went anywhere. Yeah, well, whatever it is, it damn well better be entertaining. And that's how the book ends. I just wanted to read two little passages, one from the beginning and one from the end. So I have two leading characters, Agnes, who's a teacher, Heidi, who's her student, who later reinvents herself as Quinn to be the star of the reality TV show.
Are you ready for me?
No. I'm just going to read something at the end of the book.
I wasn't sure. Okay, go ahead.
I'm going to read something at the end of the book after Heidi or Quinn and Agnes have had their encounter.
Good.
Sorry, my eyes are not all that they could be yet. Okay. So she has come home after she's been away, after Quinn has done something really terrible to where she lives. It is only 4 o'clock in the afternoon, but the new drapes, the fig colored drapes, or is it blackberry, are closed for the day. Marcus has lit a fire, so the tonality of the room is far from grim. She remembers how vain her father was about his ability to light a fire quickly and efficiently. They're working so hard to amuse her, and she pretends to be amused. She goes to the kitchen to feed the dog and give it water. She is pleased at the sight of her bowls, her pitchers, her platters, chaste and orderly on the white painted shelves. Opening a drawer, she lifts the salad servers, a gift from her mother-in-law, enjoying their silver heft, the ice cream scoop that was her father's, the napkin rings with their painted blue, red, and purple flowers. She stops to put the dog's food on the floor and, rising up, feels a lightness in her head. And she wonders if it's the mojitos. The windows over the sink show that the sun is setting fast. What an unsettled and unsettling time October is, she thinks. This morning, the sun shot through all the colors with the greatest possible brilliance. But now, in the time it took her to spoon the dog's food into her dish, put it down, and rise again to standing, the sky has turned indigo, the last light disappearing, swallowed whole, as if some shade or curtain had been roughly drawn down. Her sense of well-being is entirely gone now. The disappearing light has snatched it clean away. She tells herself there is no reason for what she is feeling. Nothing has changed. Everyone is as they were. My daughter, my son-in-law, my grandson, my friends, my dog, my bowls, my pitchers, my silver, my napkin rings. My and my and my and my. She has always known her range was very small, but is there nothing larger, nothing so capacious that there is no place for it following the word my? It frightens her to keep saying my and my and my, to call up as if it were a web of lucky accident, of a good fortune so capricious that it could be taken away in a moment, as if it had never been. Her daughter has seen the shade pulled down, the curtain drawn. She takes her mother's hand and then pushes her almost roughly into the living room, then takes her hand again, walking her to the couch, pulling her mother down, sitting beside her. Leo, Maeve says to her son, now you must play us something wonderful. Sure, Leo says, picking up his violin case. A jet of love for him rushes up like the water in her beloved Roman fountains, arching and then returning to the base or basin, endlessly replenishing, endlessly refreshed. Sure, he says, and she wonders, what is there to be sure of? Nothing. He doesn't know that yet. She doesn't know if she wants to be on earth when the time comes that he does know. She will be able to do nothing to help him. She will only be an encumbrance. We are not safe, she thinks. No one is ever safe. From what she saw when Quinn cut down the trees, hatred and ugliness, that was what she saw. Perhaps nothing can keep them back. Even here in this small house, on this small street, in this small town, what they have done will be only partially effective. Whatever they do, they cannot keep Quinn away. She will come back whenever she wants. She will do whatever she needs to do. This is the Schubert Sonatina in A minor, Leo says, and begins to play. Agnes stops thinking about Heidi, about the fate of the earth, even about her love for Leo, and allows the music to wash over her, to penetrate her, to allow her for a moment a sense of something beyond destruction, some place where these notes are housed and preserved, a shelter that will, despite everything, and in some way she cannot fathom or name, endure. But even if there is, even if it does endure, she thinks, it cannot keep us safe. The distance is too great. No one could span it. It is much too far, remote, and inaccessible. It is what it is, not keeping us safe, but keeping something, something, somewhere. These words, she thinks, vague and imprecise, are what we have. Leo puts down the violin. The music ends. Her love for him flares. A gold light rims the room. Please play some more, his mother says. Once again, he picks up his violin, puts the handkerchief on his shoulder, places his violin on top of it, rests his chin against the instrument's dark wood. He raises his bow, and once again, there is music. Okay, Asa.
Okay, I love that. I'm glad you ended actually with reading that part. I thought you were just going to do the beginning and the end, and I'm so glad you read that. There's so many things, I guess, that are on my mind. I love the book. And well, maybe to start with, one of the things that Marilyn mentioned in the beginning was the whole idea of revenge. But there's also something else, and that is atonement. And those two things seem to, be playing out throughout the book. And I'm wondering if you'd like to say something more about that, either about one or both, or the relationship between them, or whatever, wherever you want to go with that.
Okay. So again, I've always been really fascinated by revenge. As Asa knows, I briefly thought of being a 17th century scholar, partly because I like the dramas of which are so full of revenge and the Jacobean period. But it seems to me revenge is an appetite that can never be satisfied. Once you start nibbling at it, it doesn't make you fuller, it just makes you hungrier. And I think that there's a sort of commonplace that anger is good, but some kinds of revenge, if you want payback, you'll never ever get enough. And in religious ritual, I think in all religions, there is a ritual of atonement in which you can do something to acknowledge the harm that you've done. But if you want revenge, no atonement is possible. It will never, ever be enough. And so I think there's almost something mystical about the ability to forgive, the ability to let go. And it requires some kind of wholeness. And Heidi/Quinn just doesn't have that wholeness.
But that's such a hard thing. I mean, I think, just speaking personally, I guess, it just seems to me that's one of the hardest things, is to let go, of anger and to forgive. And would you say that that's sort of also what Agnes does by the end?
Well, Agnes has to let go because she's done everything that she can. And there's nothing more that she can do. And she has to, so I meant the ending almost to be a mystical vision, that the only way she can let go is to sort of have a vision of something larger than herself, something that cannot be rationally explained, but you just sort of let it go and put it out there, because you realize that what you can do, what you can know, is so limited.
But in a sense, isn't that kind of paradoxical? Because, you're letting it go. It's a mystical vision, but she's just been saying my in that passage, and I don't know.
Well, I think that's
you're reducing.
That's the paradox, that
right.
We can only get to a mystical vision if we have the wholeness that has come to us by knowing who we are and by having things or people that are dear to us. And that's the only way that wholeness can be nourished. And that's the only way that paradoxically you can let go of it. But if you've never had it, if you've never had anything that you think is dear and precious and belongs to you, you'll always be empty. And that's the emptiness that can't be filled.
I think that's wonderful. That I love that. That makes it sound like it also ties in with the horrible Heidi Quinn.
Yeah, I
Doesn't,
mean,
you know,
I tried to, one of the things that Marilyn said that, you know, every now and then I think, oh my God, you know, why have I spent my life writing fiction when, you know, why didn't I do something important? But I think that why fiction is, in particular the novel, is more important than ever, is that a novel doesn't tell us either or, it says both and it says yes but. And Heidi is both a victim and a victimizer. And she, you know, what W.H. Auden says, those to whom evil is done, do evil in return. And if you've never been loved, if you have felt from your birth unloved, untreasured, you can't love and treasure. And so on the one hand, she's hideous, but on the other hand, I wanted us to feel, wow, she really was given a raw deal. And also Agnes did blow it. She didn't mean to, but she did something which did terrible harm. And one of the things I was thinking about is that, you know, in our unconscious, there are all these things that can bubble out that we didn't mean to. And sometimes they can just do terrible harm that has nothing to do with our will to harm. So that's one of the terrible things that I think about life. Among many terrible things.
And they just slip out, you know, it's this thing that she just says so quickly.
I think
almost without thinking.
those of us who were of a certain age, you know, I sometimes I feel, oh, the world is so much worse than it was. But when we were young, we were taught that if a woman was raped, it was her fault.
Right.
And she must be wearing the wrong clothes, or she must have been in the wrong place, or if she just acted differently. And I think that's very deep in all of us. And it's that kind of conditioning, which Agnes doesn't even believe, that was deeply in her and still in many of us, where we kind of want to blame women for being victims. And we know better, but there's something that if we don't watch it, it bubbles up, and we have to tamp it down with our new knowledge. But it was, as Virginia Woolf would say, it was inscribed on the soft wax of childhood, and it's there. It's there.
It's very hard to get rid of that, the blaming and everything, the blaming the victim.
Yeah.
And you know, what you just said, though, makes me also think about age and aging, because she is, Agnes is 70 for so much of it. And there is so much of the relationship between past being young and now being older. And I think it's a lot to say, since all of us are now of a certain age. And so I would like you to talk more about the whole thing of aging.
Well, it's a topic, women aging has not been dealt with very much in fiction.
I agree.
And I feel like our cohort is in a terrible position because we're not allowed to get old, but we're old. So we're constantly being told you're too old, but you can't get old. I mean, you're too old to be at the center of the web, but you better be able to fit into a bathing suit. I mean, when my grandmother was my age, she was wearing old lady shoes and elastic stockings. And you know, I mean, if I can't, you know, if I can't do Pilates, I feel like a failure. So I feel like it's a very difficult time to be an older woman because you're both too old and not allowed to get old. And things have slipped away from you. On the other hand, your life has richness because you've had all these experiences, and you simultaneously feel enriched and not enough. So
Yeah.
I think it's a very paradoxical time to be an older woman. And, you know, all these movies about how all these women in their 60s are suddenly finding some 35-year-old
Right.
gym teacher that is longing for them. It's just not the way it is. It really isn't. And I think we don't know how to deal with that.
Mhm. But
A film
so
director once said to me, nobody will ever be able to make a movie of your books because what you're always writing about is the relationship between the past and the present. So everything
Oh,
that you write would
no.
have to have two actresses in it. It would be too expensive to make a movie.
That's horrible, but that's part of that ageism. And
Yeah,
does it happen to like Clint Eastwood? No, you know.
no, but anyway,
And but I think it's, but also thinking about how Agnes thinks back to her child, I mean, to her younger years, and she's always kind of circling back. And
yeah,
in some ways, you think you've moved beyond it, that it's not going to come back and bite you in the whatever, but it does
yeah,
with her.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think it can, and I think that we are our past. Either we overcome it, we incorporate it, but you can't just throw it away. It doesn't just disappear.
Right, right. In some ways, though, does she find some solace with beauty?
Yes.
But even beauty is under attack in it,
Yeah. I
in
mean,
the book.
so Quinn knows how important beauty is to Agnes as a solace, and I don't want to spoil the book for people who haven't read it, but she
Right,
tries to
right,
attack the beauty that is a solace to Agnes, because Agnes has always gotten solace from beauty. And you know, Quinn, that's the very thing that Quinn attacks. And that's the thing that Agnes tried to give Quinn when she was her teacher, was a sense of
right.
beauty and a sense of the importance of beauty. So Quinn knows very well that how precious that is to Agnes, and so how vulnerable she will be to its being attacked.
I just think all of those things just tie together. I think this is such a beautiful, and it's a rich book. And like a lot of the things you write, there's such a strong religious and ethical kind of base to it, and something that's not specific to a particular religion. It's something much more. I think it's probably time for me to turn it over to the Q&As, unless there's something specific you'd like to say in response to that. I don't know, the religion, whatever.
We'll see how many
If I
questions.
can just point out, we don't have any burning questions yet. Although there was
Oh.
one comment about the town Brimstone, and the question of, was that
Okay.
intentional? And I wrote back, I thought, yes, but we'd like to hear from you too. So keep going. It's wonderful to listen to you. And if we get any questions, maybe we'll just open it up and ask people if they have burning questions at the end, but it's
Yeah,
going
right.
beautifully. So keep going.
So brimstone was delivered like fire and brimstone, which is hell. That's why I chose.
She's a Milton scholar. We know that. She knows that very well. There is one question. Let's see. Do we have the question from Ellen Birnbaum? Erica? Ellen Birnbaum, would you like to unmute yourself and ask your question? Can you do it? Are we allowed? Yeah. Why don't you unmute yourself and ask your question, since you just have it? It's
Can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Oh, okay. Well, first of all, greetings to all of my 71 classmates and everyone else. Mary, fascinating story about Heidi and Agnes. And I have two questions. One is of bigger themes, and one is a very specific choice that you made about a detail. So if there's time, I'll ask both of them. And it's in the chat. I don't know if people can see it. How would the concept of justice fit in with Heidi's need for revenge and Agnes's need for atonement and absolution? And the very specific question I had, at the beginning of the book, when Agnes is in New York and she turns right on Fifth Avenue, I wondered why you chose to say that turning right was what she believed was south, instead of just saying that she turned south.
Because she wasn't a New Yorker.
Because she was not a New Yorker?
Yeah, she was from Rhode Island.
Okay. And
That's why.
what about the justice part?
Well, I think it's fascinating because justice is a very, very elusive quality. Because what could Agnes do to make up to Heidi for what she had done unintentionally? She can say, I'm terribly sorry. But what would justice be? And so if we assume that justice is equivalence, that's very, very hard to get in the world. And it's also, you think about things like the death penalty. Does one death, is that justice for another death? Probably, but do we want that? And so I think justice is a really, and it's one of the first things that a kid will say, that's not fair. But justice is very slippery, and it can be, we require it. And I think one of the things is justice requires acknowledgement. And it's what, a lot of these guys who are accused of things, they won't say, I did it. They'll say, I didn't do it. Whereas if you begin by saying, I did it, it was terrible, what can I do to make it up to you? Then you can begin. But it has to begin with acknowledgement and making oneself vulnerable to hear what the victim wanted.
Does that get at your question, Ellen?
Yeah, I agree. Justice is a very elusive concept, and I just was wondering how it fit in with, revenge on one hand and atonement on the other. And I don't know.
Well, it's difficult because atonement requires the victim to forgive. And so it's asking yet another thing from the victim who has already given too much. So, so that's where the slipperiness comes in, I think.
Thank you. Congratulations on your book.
Thank you. Thank you.
I now have this other thought, now that you just said that, if you think of it in terms of religion, though, you atone, it's not always just between you and the other person. Atonement is often to, a thing you perform, not necessarily only to another person, but I'm not putting this right, but also Quinn acts as God, you know. She's the judge, and boy, she's going to extract everything horrible that she can in brimstone.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And also,
I don't know.
I think the problem is if we don't have a community where values are agreed on and there's a place where ritual can do its work.
Right.
In a way, ritual is the mystical part that allows forgiveness. And if you don't have that, you can just go in an endless circle of revenge.
or have reality shows,
right.
right?
We do have another question coming up from Cheryl.
Good.
You want to unmute yourself, Cheryl, and ask the question? She wants to know about your next book, but do you have a microphone with you? Are you able?
Yes, thank you very
Hi,
much.
Cheryl. Hi.
Hi. I very much appreciate your themes in your books. As a rabbi, I resonate with the questions that you raise and the resolutions or non-resolutions that you provide. And I'm wondering what might be in the pipeline for the next book.
Well, the book that I'm working on now is actually nonfiction, and it's called What Kind of Catholic Are You? And I create couples who, they're not in the ordinary sense, but two people who both of whom say that their worldview was shaped by their Catholicism, but their worldviews are diametrically opposed. So, for example, I'm juxtaposing Bill O'Reilly and Stephen Colbert. I'm juxtaposing Sonia Sotomayor and Amy Coney Barrett. I'm juxtaposing Nancy Pelosi and Kellyanne Conway. Because one of the things that annoys me is people thinking that there's just one way of being Catholic. And for most people, that's that you're very right wing, that you're sexually puritanical and closed-minded. And I'm just trying to make the point that, you know, Catholicism has been around for a long time. So there are really a lot of different ways of being Catholic. So that's what I'm working on now.
What a wonderful concept. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would love to have you both go back to the issue of female professors and students and mentors and proteges and the sensitivity. I loved what you were saying about unintentionally something can come out that strikes, you know, the other person, because I was thinking that what Agnes said was very innocent. She was just maybe saying, what were you, oh my God, what were you, you know, I heard it as, why did you go up with a man? Or, you know, meaning not to blame her, but oh my God, like that, you naive person. And for a lifetime, I mean, I've had a whole lot of worse things ever happen to me that I didn't want to pay back than that. So what, you know.
Well, I
both
think
of
the
them
fact
professors,
there were
so, right.
two reasons, well, three reasons, and then I'll talk about mentorship. Heidi was at an absolutely vulnerable moment. And Agnes was the only person in the world she had ever trusted. And so those two things made the words much more potent and much more toxic. And one of the things I was trying to say that I really believe is that I hate the word mentee. It sounds like some mammal in Florida.
Right, mentor, right. Yeah.
It sounds like a
I like
manatee.
protege instead, right.
Right.
Yeah.
Particularly for young teachers, it can be very difficult to set boundaries. And if you're going to mentor someone, you have to be really hyper vigilant about boundaries. While you want the person to feel special, you want the person to feel looked after and looked at and appreciated, but you have to be really, really strict about keeping the boundaries. And Agnes was very young, and she got thrown into teaching without a lot of guidance, you know, from people who had taught a long time. So I think that the mentor protege relationship can be, and I've been very blessed by it in my life, but it's tricky. You have to be really, really careful about boundaries. And that isn't always easy, particularly if a student is needy. And you have this fantasy that you're going to, I mean, partly it was Agnes's, partly it was.
Whoops, did we lose Mary?
Oops.
Maybe she'll come back in. She was right in the middle of a very juicy thought too.
No.
I know, she'll come back. Asa, do you want to comment on, because you've been a professor as well, and you know, you get to be a professor and it's like anything else. you know, you get to be something because you're good at a discipline, and then you have a completely different job, which is to teach other people about it, right?
Yeah, and well, I'll tell you in some ways this, I mean, I'm still teaching at my advanced age, and
Yeah, me too.
right now things are more difficult. Even
Can you
a
hear
lot
me
of
now?
students really need the mentor. Is she back?
We
Yeah,
can
I'm
hear
back.
you, but we can't see you, Mary.
That's
Okay.
all right.
Oh, well, we like seeing you.
Okay, I
Okay.
don't know
At
how to
least we
get,
can, oh, there, we have you now. You're
okay.
back. Okay. We were just continuing to talk about, Asa was just saying things about, you know, we are both
Oh,
professors
Go
as
back
well.
to
Yeah.
Mary.
Go back to you. We were in the middle of
Yeah,
a juicy thought.
partly it was, it was Agnes's vanity that nobody liked Heidi. And she thought, oh, you know, nobody sees the good in her. I can see the good in her. And it was that kind of vanity of, I'm going to save the one that nobody cares about. And it blinded her to the fact that Heidi's neediness had some negative potential.
So that sounds like a certain amount of ego and pride was involved in that, you know?
Yes, yes,
And a little bit of saving the world, kind of, you know, I can be the one, as you mentioned. right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
There's a,
But that's very hard.
go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah, say more.
I mean, I just think it's hard because that whole mentoring thing, especially, I mean, I guess what I was starting to say, but you know, I don't really want to go on about it. Seems to me students even now are much needier, given what's been going on in the last year and a half with COVID and everything. And so it's very easy to get into that kind of, you know, I mean, there's a lot more demands for the empathy and everything. And it's like Mary said, though, it's hard because you need to keep those boundaries at the same time as, you know, and you're always checking yourself, like, am I doing
Yeah.
this partly for me
Right,
rather than really fully for them?
right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Do I feel good that I'm the person
Right.
that they come to and not
Right.
somebody else I don't like, you know? I mean, I don't know.
It's like servant
Yeah.
leadership, you know, you should not have stakes in the game for yourself, even though, you know, it's part of what you see about why you got into it in the first place, right?
But everybody has a stake in the game or we wouldn't do anything. So,
Are
We
there other,
always do.
yeah, are there
I
other
mean-
questions that people have? We have about 5 more minutes for this great dialogue. I wish we had double the time. And, or things that either one of you want to say in the last
I
5
think there was
minutes.
another question, somebody.
Well, somebody was asking about how many people in the class of 71 are professors and university faculty. Because that's a kind of a relevant conversation for that group. But is there another question, Erica, that you see that you've screened? I think that maybe I would love to hear you talk a little bit about your comment about fiction and the role of fiction. I thought that was so profound.
I think that, you know, as I said, one of the things that has ruined our national conversation is either or. I'm right, I'm completely right, therefore you're completely wrong. And
Right.
we are so averse to nuance now that we almost can't talk to each other. And I think
Right.
that what fiction, particularly a novel, because there's time to explore one side and the other and the contradiction. And as I always say to my students, great fiction says this, not this, and this, and its opposite, all at the same time. And I think that's
And
one of the most important things that has been lost from this world is the idea of nuance and complexity, because if everything has to be in 100 characters or less on a tweet, you know, there's no time for nuance.
And I assume there's probably a lot of people on this call with our English major headsets, mindsets, who I love novels the longer they are.
Yeah,
just for what you say, for the depth of it. I hate when they end, when the great ones end.
yeah.
So I don't think that's true of a lot of other, maybe some newer generations or maybe tweeters. Maybe it isn't age related, but
Well, I think one
character
of the
related.
things that the new technology has done is people can't sit still,
Mhm.
and they have to have
ADD,
a
right.
response. They have to have a response immediately, and it has to be
Yeah.
short. And that makes me really sad.
Yeah. How many
Of course,
characters are
people
left?
probably said that when the printing press was invented too, but I don't
I
know.
mean, and the Luddites, right? We don't want to be
Yeah.
Luddite, technical
No.
Luddites. Well, we have 7 more minutes and any other things? Asa, Professor Gabor, do you want to add
No,
anything?
you can just call me Asa, really, seriously.
Thank you. Thank you. I tried to get it right. Go ahead.
My granddaughters do, so,
Gabori.
yeah,
Um,
very good, okay.
Okay, because I know you
No, I
talked a lot.
thought there
you know,
was
thought-
another question there in the chat, but I don't see it now.
Well,
Okay.
the chat was really about publishing in age. Do you
Yeah.
have, and I don't know if somebody named Mary Gordon has trouble getting, would you have any trouble getting published?
Yes,
I wouldn't think
I
so
do.
at this
Yes,
point.
I do.
Oh, yes,
It
wow, interesting. Go
happened to
ahead.
Everybody as
That's
they get
Rabbi
older.
Weiner's
It's like
question
horrible.
again.
Ageism.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't have so much trouble getting books published because I have an editor with whom I have a good relationship for the moment. But, I can't get, I used to be able to get op-eds in the Times. I've sent things to the Times, to the Washington Post. They don't want to know about it. There are fewer magazines that publish fiction. It's much harder to get short fiction published, or essays if it's from a perspective of an older woman. It's much harder. They don't really want to hear from me or us as much.
yeah.
I mean, if
Cheryl,
you look at
you're
the
nodding.
number of
Yeah.
if you look at the number
go
of first novels that are reviewed in the book review now,
Right.
it seems to be, it's all young people.
Or even second novels. It's like, right, but
Yeah.
it's really true.
On the other
Ellen,
hand, we have a long time to live and be productive, and look at all of us, right? We're going into the saging stage. We are really in the last, we have 5 more minutes. In that time, maybe at this time, I'd take the opportunity, unless you have some final statements.
I think there was one more question from Ellen.
There is.
Oh, here, from Ellen. Go ahead. You want to do it again, Ellen? About Agnes's feelings for her husband.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't want to monopolize the questions, but it was something I wondered about. If you could say a few words about how you thought about Agnes's relationship to her husband.
Well, what I was trying to say is there were a lot of different relationships because it was a long marriage. And so there was the time where they were attracted to each other, and she kind of felt that he saved her. He was a life force. And then there was when they were the parents of young children. But then what I wanted to talk about that interested me was she almost couldn't forgive him for the fact that he felt he could let himself off the hook for what he had done, which in a way was a lot worse than what she had done. And that sense of it alienated her from him. So that was another phase in the marriage. And she had this almost revenge affair, which
But he didn't know about it.
he didn't know about it, but it kind of, she felt that she had paid him back. And then she could enter into a different relationship with him, which was very sweet, but it wasn't the passion of youth, and it wasn't the passion of parenthood, but it was a real sweetness. So what I was trying to say was, in a long marriage, there are a lot of different marriages.
In another life where we'd have another good hour, I'd love to hear you talk about how where these characters come from. I mean, you
That's what
know,
I don't know. There's no answer to that.
oh, it's a great, I love the mystery of it, of the
Yes.
creative people,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Well, listen, I have the sad job of having to really provide a closing down and ending of this. First of all, thank you both so much. This was fascinating. It was stimulating. It took me back to what I love about, you know, we all love words, concepts, ideas. We English majors and many of the other people who didn't major in English, but certainly would show up and love reading and love words. Thank you for taking us behind some of the scenes, sharing what's in your head, for the dialogue between you two colleagues, which obviously you like and
And
know each
dear
other.
friends, we're
And
not
dear,
just
Dear
colleagues. We're
friends,
not
yes.
just colleagues. We're
even better, even
very
better.
dear friends, very
that-
dear friends.
And that brings us to the dear friends part of a great reunion. You know, we have Reunion Reimagined, and we're thrilled that we have a great reaction to it, that we're showing up. As Rona said this morning, you know, be bold, be Barnard, you know, it's our connection to it. And I want to say there's so many, this is day one. There's so many other great events planned, including there's a Barnard trivia, there's a bingo game, there's a talent show, there's an incredible conversation with a woman I think is brilliant, Provost Linda Bell. And I am hosting one of my favorite events about Reunion, which is the Moth Storytelling Hour. I did my stint in 2010, and now I'm getting to host these stories, because let's face it, story and narrative is what we love. That's what we're here for today. That's why we appreciate writers, Mary, and scholars of literature, Asa. And so I want to thank you all for showing up, and I hope you will continue to keep showing up. And I wish this were longer and that we could continue a very lively dialogue. It's been beautiful. Thank you.
Thank
We
you.
love creativity. Take care, everyone.
Bye.